One sleepless night, after staying up late reading Tianwen, I opened the Proxy group chat. Eager to make some extra money, I impulsively decided to take on a big job without much thought. The next day, during a class, the teacher began calling roll. When my turn came, I raised my hand confidently. The teacher, with a slight smile, remarked that he thought the student was a girl. I quickly explained that I was her boyfriend attending class to take notes for her because she was ill. The teacher nodded understandingly and said, "I see." But then he added, "Stay after class. I'd like you to come home with me to meet your girlfriend," which caught me off guard. With a light course load and free time on my hands, I often took proxy jobs through the group chat to cover my living expenses. That day, someone posted about needing a substitute for 3 afternoon classes. I jumped at the opportunity, claiming the job immediately. After confirming the student's name, Liu Ruion, the course details, and any specific instructions, I arrived early at the classroom, ready to blend in. I had heard the teacher for this class was a kind woman who rarely called roll, which put me at ease. As long as the roll call went smoothly, I figured I'd be fine. Settling in, I pulled out my English homework to pass the time. But when the class bell rang, a male teacher walked in, set his books down, and began setting up his laptop. Confused, I double-checked the course details, time, and classroom were correct. Leaning toward the classmate beside me, I whispered, "I thought this was taught by a female teacher. Why is there a male teacher today?" The classmate, equally puzzled, glanced at the teacher and said, "It's always been a female teacher. Maybe it's a last-minute change." The group didn't mention anything. The teacher opened his slides and announced, "Teacher Zhang has personal matters today, so I'm covering her class." Then he pulled out a roll sheet and said, "Let's start with roll call." My heart sank. The information I had was wrong, and now he was checking attendance. I glanced at the name again, Liu Ruion. When he called her name, I raised my hand confidently. Since this teacher had never taught the class before, I was certain he wouldn't know Liu Ruion. I had initially worried he might recognize her and suspect I was a proxy, but now I felt reassured. However, the teacher frowned, looked at me, then at the roll sheet, and said I thought Liu Ruion was a girl. Panicking, I turned to the boy next to me for help. He whispered, "Is Liu Ruion a girl?" The boy nodded and said, "Yeah, she's the captain of our academy's tennis team. A lot of people know her." My stomach dropped. Thinking fast, I put on a sad expression and said, "Teacher, I'm her boyfriend. She's sick and didn't want to miss class, so she asked me to take notes for her." The teacher smiled, nodded, and said, "I see. Got it." I was quietly congratulating myself on my quick thinking when the teacher added, "Don't leave after class. I have something to discuss with you." His words sent a wave of anxiety through me, and I spent the entire class on edge. During a break, I checked the school's website for the teacher's profile and searched online for more information. What I found was alarming. Everyone described him as notoriously strict, with zero tolerance for skipping classes or proxy attendance. In a panic, I messaged Liu Ruion, "You're in trouble." She replied almost instantly. "Caught," I responded. "Probably." And they switched to a really strict male teacher instead of the female one. There was a long pause. Her chat showed typing for what felt like forever. Finally, she sent 4 words. "No big deal." Her calm response reassured me, and I decided to let go of my worries for the time being. During the break, I turned to the classmate next to me to ask about Liu Ruion. As her supposed boyfriend, I couldn't know nothing about her. After some discreet inquiries, I learned that her life was surprisingly simple, almost pitifully so. She was the captain of her academy's tennis team and loved playing tennis. Beyond that, no one seemed to know much else. She rarely skipped classes, but this time I heard she had a match with another academy that clashed with the course. To prioritize the match, she couldn't attend class. Finally, after enduring 3 long classes, the teacher looked at me and said, "Liu Ruian's boyfriend, come with me." I obediently followed him to his office, my nerves on edge. He offered me a stool and said casually, "No need to be nervous. Have a seat." I didn't dare sit quickly, declining the offer. He asked my name, which academy I was from, what year I was in, and my hobbies. I answered Lin Feng, Foreign Language Academy, sophomore. I usually like going to concerts. He nodded and remarked, "Same age as Liu Ruion, huh? That's nice." Then he asked, "Is Liu Ruian's temper good? Does she treat you well? Does she ever give you a hard time?" Caught off guard by his sudden questions, I stammered, "She's great to me. Our relationship is very stable." Satisfied, he nodded and said, "Good. Come to my place for dinner tonight. It'll be a good chance to meet your girlfriend." Shocked, I leaned closer, only to see him looking at me with a knowing gaze, a faint smile on his lips. What's there to be afraid of? If you don't come, she might fail the course. Committed to being a responsible proxy. I gritted my teeth and agreed. Because Liu Ruian's father, whom I assumed was the teacher, kept asking me questions, I had no chance to warn Liu Ruion in advance. When we arrived at his home, I was surprised by how approachable he seemed. Despite his online reputation for being strict, my afternoon with him showed a kind and gentle side. He said warmly, "Our Ruyen has her share of bad habits. You'll need to be patient with her. If she does anything wrong, just let me know." In my mind, I thought, when would I ever have time to learn about her habits? But I nodded and said, "Got it." He chuckled, then corrected me. "Don't call me teacher. Call me uncle." He led me to a photo wall in the living room, and that's when I saw Liu Ruion for the first time. She looked oddly familiar. After racking my brain, I remembered I had seen her before on the tennis court. My roommate used to have a crush on a girl from the tennis team and often dragged me to the courts. During a match between our academy and the Computer Science Academy, our team got crushed. As my roommate and I were leaving, a tennis ball came flying toward us from afar. Liu Ruion, standing behind us, caught it effortlessly. She smiled and asked softly, "Did that scare you?" My roommate, dazed, shook her head and grabbed my arm, whispering, "She's so beautiful. Maybe even prettier than the girls in our academy." I had nodded in agreement. She was indeed stunning. Uncle pointed to a photo and said, "This is Ruyen in junior high. She played tennis every day and got so tanned." He gestured to another. "This one's from elementary school." Finally, his hand moved to the last photo. My eyes followed, landing on an image of Liu Ruion as a toddler, squatting on the ground in split pants, grinning. I tried to look away, but the image was already seared into my mind. Embarrassed and unsure how to react, I stood there awkwardly. Just then, a knock came at the door. Uncle glanced at me and said, "That must be Rian. She never brings her keys. Go open the door for her." I wanted to protest, but he was already pushing me toward the door. With no choice, I opened it and saw Liu Ruion standing there, a tennis ball tucked at her waist. She looked like she had just finished a match, sweat still glistening on her forehead. When she saw me, she froze for a second, then stepped back to check the house number, muttering, "I didn't get the wrong house, did I?" I waved at her with a grin. "Nice to meet you, girlfriend." She blinked, her smile lingering for a moment, before Uncle poked his head out from behind me. He beamed at Rian and said, "I've got a surprise for you. Your boyfriend covered your class today, and I took the liberty of inviting him over." Realization dawned on her face, and she winked at me, saying, "Dad, really? You brought Lin Feng here without telling me. I'm completely unprepared." With that, she grabbed my sleeve and pulled me inside, acting as if we'd known each other forever. Uncle seemed momentarily taken aback by her reaction, watching us with a puzzled look. But he quickly smiled, patted Ruyan's shoulder, and said, "All right, you two chat. I'll start dinner. Your mom should be home soon, and we'll surprise her too." As he headed to the kitchen, Ruyan sat next to me and whispered, "Let's sync our stories." Confused, I mumbled a response. She glanced at Uncle in the kitchen and lowered her voice further. "I figured it out. My dad taught the class today, didn't he? He's super strict. If he finds out you were proxying for me, I'm definitely failing this course. So let's exchange info to make sure we don't slip up." Her quick thinking impressed me, definitely a sharp STEM student. She opened her chat app, changing my contact name from Ling Feng to Lin Feng with a heart emoji. She sent me a heart emoticon, and when I didn't move, she grabbed my phone. "Hurry, change my contact name, or my dad will catch on, and I'm done for." Stunned, I murmured, "But that's extra." She nodded casually. "Small problem." Then she changed her contact name in my phone to Little Yanyan. I got goosebumps, but sent her a heart back. With that settled, she continued, "We've been together for 5 months. I fell for you at first sight and chased you. We first met on the tennis court when I saved you from a flying tennis ball, and I was smitten." I paused, feeling a sense of déjà vu. "Wait, isn't that exactly how we met?" I interrupted. "You caught the ball for me. Shouldn't I be the one falling for you?" She thought for a moment, frowning. "Right. So did you fall for me?" I shook my head. She shrugged. "Exactly. So it has to be me who fell for you." I reluctantly agreed, but something felt off. I rubbed my chin, thinking alongside her. "We're missing something." She snapped her fingers. "A photo together?" She stood up, searching for a good spot in the house to take a picture. I followed her as we circled the place 3 times. She shook her head. "No good. It's too obvious we took it here today." She scrolled through her phone's gallery. "I remember playing against your academy. Did you come to watch?" I nodded. "I didn't miss a single match." Ruyan paused, a shy smile creeping onto her face as she lowered her head. "And you say you didn't fall for me at first sight," she teased. She pulled up photos from the match against our academy and carefully scanned them, spotting me in the corner of a few shots. Sure enough, there I was. Satisfied, she sent me the photos, her smile radiant. "Now we've got our couple photos. In a few days, I'll print them out and add them to the photo wall." As she walked toward the photo wall, her smile froze when she noticed the picture of herself in split pants. She blinked, as if unable to believe it was still there. With lightning speed, she covered the photo, turning back to me with an awkward scratch of her head. "You didn't see anything, right?" I stood behind her, supposedly blocked from view, but Uncle had already shown me the photo earlier. Seeing her ears turn bright red, I hesitated, unsure whether to admit the truth or spare her the embarrassment. I pursed my lips and said I saw the childhood one, but not the grown-up you. It was a half-truth, straddling the line between seeing and not seeing. I don't know why those words slipped out, but the moment they did, we both froze. Trying to escape the awkwardness, I walked to the window, opened it, and let the breeze cool my face. Uncle came out with dishes for the table and noticed me standing alone. "Where's Ruion?" he asked. Fanning my face with my hand, I forced a smile and turned. "Uncle Ruion's in the bathroom." He nodded, then squinted at me. "Why's your face so red?" Just then, Ruion emerged from the bathroom, catching his comment. She grabbed Uncle's arm and said, "Dad, don't embarrass a young guy like that." Uncle chuckled, giving a knowing look. "All right, I won't say anything." Sighing, he muttered as he returned to the kitchen. Young people these days are so thin-skinned. Once again, it was just the two of us in the living room. Ruion plopped onto the sofa, hugging a pillow, and gestured to the spot beside her. "Sit." I nodded, took a deep breath, and sat down. Trying to break the ice, I asked, "So how was the match today?" Her face lit up, and she launched into an animated recount. "We won, but you wouldn't believe how dirty the other team played. Let me tell you." Talking about tennis, she was in her element, the earlier awkwardness forgotten. As she spoke passionately, the door opened, and Ruion's mom walked in. My heart sank. She was none other than Professor Song, the strictest professor in our foreign language academy. Her classes demanded my full attention. One slip, and she'd call you to the front for an impromptu presentation. I shot to my feet, my voice barely a whisper. "Hello, Professor Song." She looked surprised to see me. "Lin Feng, you're here, and no one told me I'm completely unprepared." Ruion stood, pretending to ruffle my hair, but not actually touching me. "Mom, let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend, Lin Feng." Professor Song froze for a moment, then broke into a wry smile. She walked over to me and said, "Lin Feng, you can't just date my daughter because I called you out in class last time. Tell me, do you secretly take it out on her?" Though her words sounded like a reprimand, her playful tone caught me off guard. I never imagined the usually stern Professor Song could be so warm in private. I glanced at Ruion, unsure how to respond. She gave me a subtle nod, urging me to play along. "No, Professor Song," I said, forcing a smile. "Ruion's amazing. I'd never hold a grudge." Ruion chimed in, looping her arm through mine for show. "See, Mom, Lin Feng's the best. You don't have to worry." Professor Song raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. "All right, you two. But Lin Feng, you'd better treat my daughter well, or you'll hear from me in class." Uncle called from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready." We moved to the dining table, where the atmosphere felt surprisingly relaxed. As we ate, Uncle and Professor Song peppered us with questions about our relationship. Ruion and I had to think fast, weaving a story that sounded convincing. She described our first date at a campus cafe, while I added details about how we bonded over music. Every now and then, our eyes met, and I could tell she was enjoying the improvisation as much as I was. By the end of the night, I was exhausted from the mental gymnastics, but relieved we hadn't been caught. As I prepared to leave, Ruion walked me to the door. "You're pretty good at this," she whispered, her eyes sparkling with mischief. We make a decent fake couple. I laughed softly. Yeah, but next time you're covering the extra fee for all this acting. She grinned. Deal. As I stepped outside, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of camaraderie with Ruion. What started as a chaotic proxy job had turned into an unexpected adventure, one I wouldn't forget any time soon. Ruion turned back to me, stepping forward to shield me from Professor Song. I'm the one who chased him, she said with a grin. Even if he scolds me, I'm happy. At the dinner table, Uncle had prepared a feast that rivaled anything I'd missed from home, a welcome change from cafeteria food and takeout. I dug in eagerly, barely pausing. Ruion kept piling food onto my plate, pouring me water, and even patting my back between bites. Professor Song and Uncle watched me chopsticks frozen in midair. Uncle's gaze could have burned a hole through Ruion. He set his chopsticks down, his tone scolding. Ruion, how have you let Lin Feng get this hungry? Look at the poor boy. Ruion glanced at Uncle innocently, then leaned closer to me, whispering, Please stop eating. I'm scared. Her voice was soft, but Professor Song overheard. She grabbed Ruion's bowl, dumped its contents into mine, and shot her a glare. To me, she said gently, Don't worry, there's plenty of food. Eat as much as you want. Ruion pouted, staring mournfully at her now empty bowl. After that dinner, Ruion started inviting me to watch her tennis matches. Afterward, we'd go back to her place for meals. Over time, I began to forget I was only pretending to be her boyfriend. I slipped into the role naturally, as if it were real. One day, I had Professor Song's class, and Ruion, who had a match that afternoon, joined me. After class, we headed to the field together. Professor Song's stern demeanor in class used to intimidate me. But after a few dinners at her home, I wasn't as afraid. During the lecture, I whispered a few words to Ruion. Professor Song's eyes zeroed in on me. Lin Feng, she called out, I'm giving you a task. After the break, present an English project on your recent emotional state. I glanced at Ruion, mortified. During the 10-minute break, I frantically searched for vocabulary. Ruion sat beside me, propping her chin on her hand, watching me scramble. Seeing sweat bead on my forehead, she said, Relax, just say whatever. My mom's not that scary. When the break ended, Professor Song called me to the front. I took a deep breath and began my English presentation, stumbling through my thoughts on love and connection. I glanced at Ruion, who flashed an encouraging smile. Then, feeling bold, I gestured to Ruion, inviting her to join me. Her grin faltered as she realized she'd been roped in. Professor Song nodded, and Ruion, with no escape, walked to the front. Using her mom's laptop, she delivered an impromptu full English lesson on computer science, blending it with language in a way that was surprisingly engaging. When she finished, her eyes met mine, softening with a hint of warmth. Professor Song watched us thoughtfully. After a long pause, her face darkened. What was that completely off topic? Ruion, who had been beaming at me, froze, her smile stuck in place. Professor Song launched into a 10-minute critique as we stood side by side at the podium, not daring to speak. Ruion leaned in and whispered, Is my mom always this fierce in class? I nodded vigorously. She let out a quiet tsh and muttered, Can't tell. Good thing I don't have her class. Lucky me. I nodded again, but she kept whispering. Suddenly, Professor Song's pointer smacked Ruion's shoulder. Muttering like a buzzing fly, she snapped. I bit back a laugh, But the pointer came down on Ruion again. Professor Song turned to me. And you laughing? You're like a mosquito humming away. Ruion couldn't hold it in anymore and burst out laughing, her giggles echoing in the silent classroom. The classroom erupted in laughter, and Ruion and I, the two culprits, were promptly kicked out. We leaned against the wall in the hallway, standing obediently at first. But Ruion quickly grew restless. She glanced at the door and said, "Come on, let's skip class." I shook my head, like a rattle. "No way, I'm not daring enough for that." She shrugged. "What's the big deal? It's Song's class. If the sky falls, I'll hold it up." I thought about it. She was right. Professor Song was her mom after all. So I followed Ruion, and we ditched class. We headed to the sports field where she seemed in high spirits, her eyes sparkling. "Coming over for dinner tonight?" she asked. I shook my head, patting my stomach. "Ever since I met you, I've gained a whole size." She reached out and gently pinched my cheek. Chubby's cute too. It was the first time she'd ever touched me. Even when we were play acting in front of her parents, she'd always kept her distance, never crossing that line. Her pinch caught me off guard, and I froze, unsure how to react. My sudden stillness seemed to startle her. She looked at me flustered, her voice softening. Did I cross a line? I shook my head, then playfully pinched her cheek. "Hurry up, or you'll miss the match." The game was a friendly match, low stakes and relaxed. I sat in the stands, holding a towel and a water bottle, ready to hand them to Ruion when she was done. It was her ritual. She'd buy the water and towel herself, but insist I hold them during her matches, then make a show of me handing them to her in front of her teammates. I was engrossed in the game when Li Xia, a classmate from my academy, rushed over, sweat beading on her nose from her hurry. "Lin Feng, I finally found you. Professor Song wants you in her office." My stomach dropped. Had skipping class angered Professor Song? Even though she was Ruion's mom, I still felt an instinctive fear of her. Nervously, I checked my phone. No messages from Professor Song. "Did she say what it's about?" I asked. Li Xia, catching her breath, tapped her fingers on her leg. "No, she didn't say." I muttered to myself. That's odd. Professor Song knew I was with Ruion. If I'd skipped class, she'd likely summon both of us, not just me. And when Ruion and I were together, she rarely called for her, let alone me. Could she have messaged Ruion instead and we missed it? Ruion's phone was in her jacket pocket. I rifled through it, looking for a message from Professor Song, but found none. Instead, a notification caught my eye. A message from a guy that read, "Baby, I'm here to watch you play." The words hit me like a knife to the chest. My nose stung, and I glanced at Ruion on the court, oblivious to my actions as she focused on the game. I took a deep breath, fighting back tears, and scanned the field. In a corner, a guy stared straight at me, his expression smug and provocative. Ruion's phone pinged loudly with more messages. I didn't want to look, but my eyes betrayed me. As I moved to put the phone back, I accidentally lit up the screen. There, in plain view, was a photo of the guy and Ruion looking close and intimate. My heart sank. I practically threw the phone back into her pocket and, like a zombie, followed Li Xia off the field. By the time we reached Professor Song's office door, my mind was a blur. I stood frozen in front of Professor Song's office door, unable to muster the courage to knock. Was it the guilt of skipping class or the sting of that ambiguous message and photo? Either way, facing Professor Song felt impossible. Li Xia looked at me puzzled. What's wrong? I shook my head, biting my lip to suppress the ache in my chest, and finally knocked. No one answered. Li Xia said, maybe the professor waited too long and went home. Let's go. I took a step, but stopped abruptly. Li Xia paused too. What is it? I frowned. You're not the class rep, and you're not close to Professor Song. Why did she ask you to find me? In my distress over the message, I hadn't questioned the situation. Professor Song had my contact info. If she needed me, she'd call me or Ruion directly. Why send someone else? And that message, it came out of nowhere with its overly intimate tone. Ruion was smart, attractive, and outgoing, a tennis enthusiast with plenty of admirers. Could it be a deliberate act to stir jealousy? I'd known Ruion long enough to trust her character. She wasn't the type to play games or two-time anyone. Professor Song and Uncle were good people, and their daughter was no different. With that realization, the hurt melted away. Whatever was going on, I needed answers. Li Xia smiled faintly. I know Ruion is Professor Song's daughter, if you're really with her. Have you considered what people will say if that gets out? I raised an eyebrow. I know. So what if people learn about our connection? They'll question every achievement I earn, assuming I leaned on Ruion's influence. It wasn't a new thought. Ruion and I had stayed up late discussing it, which was why we hadn't officially defined our relationship. Though we never spoke the words, we'd silently agreed to act as a couple. I stepped closer to Li Xia, meeting her gaze. Are you trying to scare me off? She nodded candidly. Yes. I like you. I think I'm better for you than she is. I smiled. Thanks for your feelings, but I'm free to love who I want. Don't use your affection to pressure me. With that, I brushed past her and headed back to the field. Halfway there, one of Ruion's teammates called, his voice urgent. Lin Feng, where are you? Ruion got hurt playing. She's on the court. Injuries were common in sports, and I'd warned Ruion countless times to be careful. She'd promised to play safely, not recklessly, and to protect herself. Yet here she was hurt. I hung up and sprinted to the field. As I entered, the guy who'd been staring at me with that provocative look walked past, leaving quickly, without a word. I didn't care what he was up to. I just needed to see Ruion. She was sitting in the center of the court, clutching her knee, her ears red, clearly in pain. A few teammates hovered around asking about her injury. I crouched beside her, checking her knee. Where are you hurt? Does it hurt a lot? Have you called an ambulance? Ruion had been holding back her pain, but the moment she saw me, her eyes welled up. She clung to me tightly, refusing to let go. Her voice tinged with grievance. It hurt so much, but seeing you leave with that girl hurt even more. She buried her face in my shoulder, wiping her tears fiercely before looking up. Slowly, she brought out a hand she'd kept behind her back, revealing a bouquet of red jasmine flowers gripped tightly. The petals were slightly wilted, likely from being held for a while. She touched them gently, her voice and gaze soft. Lin Feng, I know you saw that guy's message. Can you let me explain? I have nothing to do with him. Her sudden gesture startled me, leaving me breathless. Her offer to explain snapped me back to reality. She continued, I've already dealt with it. Those kinds of messages won't happen again. So that's why the guy left. She must have confronted him. I nodded. I know. And I saw you notice me leaving with that girl. I want to explain too. She and I have nothing going on. It won't happen again either. Her expression shifted from hurt to sparkling joy. I know, she said, then added Lin Feng. We've known each other for 7 months and 13 days. Our first meeting was right here on this field. A ball was flying toward you, and I blocked it. I still remember you called me beautiful. She laughed. I thought you'd fall for me at first sight. I waited for you to come find me, but later when we met again, you wouldn't even glance my way. Turns out I was the one who fell for you. I was the one hoping you'd linger on me, the one wanting to know you, the one hoping you'd love me. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Lin Feng, I like you. I've liked you since the day we met. So will you be my boyfriend? I hadn't meant to cry, but her words broke through my defenses. I sniffled, and she held up the jasmine bouquet. Didn't I already answer that with these? She smiled, touching my wrist, still refusing to stand. I steadied her. Why aren't you getting up? She sank back to the ground, breathing heavily, sweat beading on her forehead. I'm really hurt, she admitted. In the hospital, her leg in a cast. She lay on the bed, her eyes never leaving me. Her stare made me fidget, so I changed the subject. What was it like the day you fell for me? Her face lit up as she recalled it, radiating the giddy aura of love despite her injury. Her smile never faded. That day you were standing on the field, your eyes sparkling your smile like crescent moons. You had this healing energy. I was wearing loose clothes, my hair a mess, just so ordinary. Yet someone could still like me so earnestly. She pulled me to sit beside her, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. So when did you fall for me? Her question caught me off guard. No single moment stood out, just countless instances of her thoughtfulness, her gentle care, the way she treated me with such warmth. I thought for a moment, every moment we've spent together. She beamed, clearly pleased, and pressed a soft kiss to my forehead. Uncle arrived with dinner, a hearty, nourishing chicken soup. Ruion couldn't eat much, but under Uncle's and my persistent coaxing, she managed to sip half the bowl of chicken soup. The rest ended up in my stomach. After seeing Uncle off, I rubbed my belly and let out a satisfied burp. Ruion, your dad's cooking is seriously amazing. She patted her own stomach, looking like she wanted to say something but swallowing her words. If you love it that much, come eat at my place every day. He says watching you eat gives him a sense of accomplishment. I nodded. That soup was so good, and you barely drank any. Not long after lying down, I felt the urge to use the bathroom, probably from all that soup. After a few trips, I started feeling hot. I shed my jacket, but it didn't help. Grabbing a notebook to use as a fan, I waved it at my face. Don't you feel hot? Ruion spoke slowly. Have you considered that I didn't drink the soup, not because it wasn't good? I didn't catch her meaning and sat up ready to tease her about rejecting such delicious soup. But then a warm trickle hit my nose. I hadn't been sick, so why the sudden sniffles? I grabbed a tissue and wiped only to see red. Nosebleed. Tilting my head back, I stuffed tissue in my nose, my voice muffled. Now, I get it too much. Nourishment. It took effort to stop the bleeding. but I still felt overheated. Sprawled beside Ruion, I kept kicking off the blanket. She pushed it aside and gently fanned me. I rested my hands on her arms, her cool touch soothing me. Scooting closer on the hospital bed, I wrapped my arms around her. She stiffened for a moment, then slowly placed a hand on my back, patting gently, her breathing soft and careful. She chuckled, brushing her fingers under my nose. What forgot how to breathe? I nodded, grabbing her wrist and lightly kissed her lips. Her eyes sparkled. I kissed her again, teasing, "Let's see who's stronger, your youthful vigor or Uncle's supercharged soup." She leaned in, silencing my next words with a kiss that stole my breath. Though she didn't need to stay in the hospital, her leg injury made getting around tricky. When we had classes in different buildings with short breaks, I'd rush ahead to cover for her. One day, Uncle was substituting for another teacher again. He pulled out the attendance sheet and called Liu Ruion. I raised my hand confidently. Uncle smiled. I thought Liu Ruion was a girl. I glanced at Ruion, who was just reaching the doorway. I'm her boyfriend. She hurt her leg and will be here soon. I'm taking notes for her. Uncle nodded. I see. The jasmine she gave me, its scent still lingers.